takes you back to
Exactly.
good old days.
Absolutely, absolutely. The good old
when
days.
life was simple.
Yes, with hot cocoa.
That's the one. I kept saying to my mum, I really regret not writing earlier in life, because I would have had like a library full of books by now. And my mum said, well, what would you have written about? And it's true, because I think I needed that time to learn, to observe people, to all of the things that you read in my books are things that I've learned throughout the course of my life.
And I always believe that reading is for every single child, irrespective of geography, irrespective of their status.
The children are not traumatised by the journey that they take, under lorries, on boats that almost capsize and drown. The thing that affects them the most is not being believed that they are children. Because can you imagine, how can you say to someone, I am a child, don't treat me like this, and then they're put in hotels with men, adults, and they have to fend for themselves. So yeah, they act older because they've had to live an older life.
In this episode of My Words, My Book, we are joined by A.M. Dassu. A.M. is a former World Book Day author and internationally acclaimed author of 13 children's books, including Boy Everywhere and Fight Back and Kicked Out, which have collectively been listed for over 55 awards, including the Carnegie Medal, Waterstones Children's Book Prize and Wheat Junior Book Award. So A.M., first question, why did you become an author?
Kind of accidentally fell into it. So I loved writing at school. And let's just say I got a little bit lazy as I became a teenager. And I probably should have studied English and become a writer earlier in life, but I didn't. And then when I had my children, we were sort of obviously reading books together, etc. And I became a parent helper in their school. And I used to help every week with swimming lessons. And in my son's class, there was this boy in the swimming lessons. After swimming, in the changing rooms, he'd always put on his socks first. And you know what the ground of a changing room is like. It's muddy, mucky, awful. And he'd put them on before his pants, before his trousers. And I'd say to him, don't do that. So I started calling him Soggy Socks. And one day I was inspired to write a book about him, and it was called Soggy Socks. And I read it to my children, and they absolutely loved it. So then I wrote a second picture book, then a third. And by the third one, I realized that this is what I should have been doing for the rest of my life. And that is literally how I decided to become a children's author.
So prior to working in your children's primary school, what was you doing before that? I'm always intrigued, probably because I'm nosy.
So I did lots of things. And so I studied economics at university. And even then I couldn't make my mind up what I wanted to do. I'm literally a very indecisive person. And I then went on to work in project management. So I was managing projects in adult education, but also in marketing. And yeah, I kept saying to my mum, I really regret not writing earlier in life, because I would have had like a library full of books by now. And my mum said, well, what would you have written about? And it's true, because I think I needed that time to learn, to observe people, to all of the things that you read in my books are things that I've learned throughout the course of my life. And all the skills that I sort of used in my previous jobs, I do use them now. So for example, project management, I have to meet deadlines. I have to sort of, manage what happens when, etc. Marketing, I've, got insight in that. I use my sort of skills when I'm promoting my books. So yeah, nothing is lost.
Absolutely. And I think all the authors that I have on this podcast, there's nobody who's 21 fresh out of university. And myself getting in late into writing, where is there such a thing as late into writing? I don't think there is actually. I think all of my lived experience, because I think if I was a lot younger, I would have handled being an author differently. But that said, it's not a message to put off younger writers into writing. It's just sharing that my lived experience and my observations, personally and professionally, have actually helped me being a writer. And you're right in saying that in terms of the different careers that I've had, the operational side of being an author is very useful. Yes, yeah.
Although for those that do it earlier in life, they're lucky because they can dedicate their whole time. We are so stressed, juggling, kids
Absolutely.
home, everything. So
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely correct about that. But I think it's interesting thus far. And I think these interviews will probably be up to 20, I believe so. Nobody is super young, but we do know we have children who have been authors, which again, to reiterate that, it's absolutely positive. But I think it's fascinating. And equally, did you ever do for instance, like a short course in creative writing?
as in when I decided to learn
Yes, yeah.
yeah, so I did lots of courses. So once I decided, okay, I want to be a writer, it was really funny actually. I reached out to an illustrator called Sheena Dempsey on her website and I said, oh, look, I really want you to illustrate my book. And she said, that's not how this works. You need an agent. And I had no clue. And I was like, So she introduced me to
I'm not a footballer, but I need an
yeah,
agent
I'm not a football. I'm not an actress. So yeah, she basically she introduced me to an organisation for children's writers, SCWI, and then I basically did so many courses. I went to agents courses, publisher courses, writing development courses, and I'm really glad I did because I was so hungry. I was determined to get published. And I don't think I have that energy now because I'm tired. But back then I was like, no, I need this. I want to do this. So yeah, I did a lot of courses. But I don't think, one of the things that my friend taught me was she's a tutor for creative writing at Kingston University and also Oxford and Arvon. And she said to me, you don't need to do have a degree or an MA in English. You've just got to read a lot and write a lot. So that's what I say to kids, like the best education and the best way to improve is read loads because that'll show you what you like and what you don't like and sort of inform you how you want to write. And if you write a lot, you'll sort of just improve on the way that you show things. So yeah, read a lot, write a lot.
And that's really because I say the same when I go into schools, or if it's a primary school, secondary school, and there's always that child with that question, I want to be a writer like you, Laura. And I say, well, you just need to keep on reading and reading and reading and reading. And similarly, probably like yourself, I get emails or direct messages from emerging writers. And the top tip that I always give is, have you read any children's books? Because therefore then, I think even the classics, even books that we raise our eyes to that have been written 50, 60 years ago, still read them. And then you can see there's a rhythm and a flow because it's very important, and then engage and see what are actually children reading. And I think you, as a writer myself, I know the type of books that I enjoy writing and I enjoy sharing with children. It's probably the same for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I get asked what's your favorite genre, like I like lots of things. What I know I definitely don't like is horror because my cousin, when I was 7 years old, forced me to watch a horror movie and I've been petrified of horror since. So yeah, I cannot do horror, but I'm open to most things. And like most of my books are sort of contemporary, like realistic fiction based in real life. But I'm now leaning towards fantasy. So I'm sort of plotting at the moment. And for the first time in my life, I'm sort of thinking of writing a fantasy. So I think as a writer, you're always learning, aren't you? There's
You
always something new
do.
to try.
There's never, and I think you're right in saying that I'm always hungry to listen to some other podcasts. This is why I enjoy doing this, because I'm also too learning from authors like yourself. And actually, we can never say that we're finished learning because there's always something to find out, even embracing the differences on social media, because you've got to, as an author, because that's part of marketing yourself, as an author,
Yeah, exactly.
What is your favorite children's book that you read as a child?
I don't like this question because
You've got
it's so hard
1,000.
to choose, right? How can I choose? So I've come up
Sorry,
with
putting you on the spot.
I've come up with a cheap answer because I think I've also got a really bad memory. And when people ask me, what's your favorite book from like your childhood? The only one that comes to my mind is this picture book called Spot the Dog. And my aunt bought it for me as a gift, and she gave it to me with Spot the Dog soft toy. And I remember reading it till I was way too old. I don't know how long I had it. And it's just, I think I've just got fond memories of that book. But I think it's also now looking back as an author, I look at it and I think that must have been the book that showed me how important it is to want to turn the page. Because it literally, you're trying to find Spot, you have to keep lifting the flaps, and you can't find him, and it keeps you going. So yeah, that I'm as my cheat answer, because I can't remember anything else, it's Spot the dog.
But I love Spot the dog books as well. Not as a young, because I don't think, because I'm quite old, but I think my children remember reading Spot the dog books to them, because you can obviously visualize the iconic yellow, that
the brown
image.
spot.
Yes. But I think one of the things that's an interesting point is, primarily I write children's picture books, and there's always an age at the back of it, in terms, for instance, for argument's sake, from 3 to 7 or 3 to 5. But I've been at an author's event and I've seen children, mouth open, who are aged 10, being engrossed with me reading that. So sometimes I think maybe we should do away with the age bracket, because I think even books are to be enjoyed for everybody from birth to 99, right?
I agree. And because like now as an author, I get proof. So they're books that you get before they're published, and I get picture books. And my daughter, she's a teenager, and we'll both sit together and read them together, because something we do together, and it's enjoyable. And they're picture books, they're written for like 2+, but they're joyful, aren't they?
Exactly.
And there's so much to look at, and you get a warm, happy feeling. So why not?
And I think that's a very clear message to share there, that it doesn't matter in terms of the age. If you enjoy that book, why not? Because if it just makes you, and that's the thing, the joy of picture books, it does give you that funny, beautiful feel to it.
Takes you back to
Exactly.
good old days.
Absolutely, absolutely. The good old
when
days.
life was simple.
Yes, with hot cocoa.
That's the one.
Absolutely. So this amazing book, Kicked Out, and I do, just to give you your flowers, I do love the way that you write. I just think it's amazing. So thank you for your talent. And Kicked Out. So what is this all about?
So Kicked Out is
illustrated by the fabulous
Zabi Fadi. Yeah. She's based in LA. She's done all of my covers. Yeah. She's actually an artistic director at Disney. So she works on movies and stuff. Yeah.
And how did that collaboration come about?
So when my first book, Boy Everywhere, was being published, my US publisher asked me to choose from the illustrators, and they gave me a choice, and I wanted Dabby because she had illustrated the Shaun the Sheep movie, but also The Breadwinner, which is an award-winning movie. And she thankfully said yes. And then I just asked in each book that was illustrated, I said, can Dabby do the same so we have continuity? So yeah, thankfully she did Kicked Out too. Yeah. So she's done 3 of the novels and my World Book Day book. So those 4. Yeah, yeah. So Kicked Out is about Ali, who you can see on the front cover. And he is living his best life at the opening because his best friend Mark's mum has won the lottery. Now Mark's gone from eating cold beans in a tin to living in this mansion with a swimming pool. And the boys are there every day after school. They can order pizza when they want. They can drink fizzy drinks. They're just, they're thinking they're going to have the best summer. And then Mark's mum's boyfriend accuses one of the boys, which is Adam, who's a refugee, of stealing £5,000. And he not only accuses him of stealing, he also kicks out Ali, Sammy, and Adam, all 3 of them. And Mark is now not allowed to see them. So the story is about them sort of trying to clear his name, but also at the same time, Ali's dad is back on the scene. So Ali's dad's not been in his life for, since he was 8, and his half-brother joins his school. So while he's sort of, helping raise money for Adam, who's a refugee, because he's going to be sent back to Syria, and try and clear his name, he's also dealing with his emotions of his dad being back, his half-brother being at school. And it's about sort of friendship mostly and community. So, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but, we hear a lot about boys and how, they aren't caring maybe, or that they don't cry, And actually this book shows you that they do, because in real life they do, you know. Boys try to show they're strong and macho sometimes, but they're soft, you know, they're tender, they're caring, and I see it all the time. And I wanted to show that in this book. So like, one of the things that comes to my mind is when my middle son came home and told me that my eldest was sitting in the playground in the rain in his suit uniform. And he wanted me to tell him off because it's like winter. Why are you sitting on the floor? But actually, I asked him, I was like, why were you sitting on the floor with this boy? And he said, well, he's autistic. He'd been bullied and he was crying. So I just went and sat next to him so he knew I'd be there. I'm there. He didn't say a word. And that's the kind of thing, you know, I hear stories like this all the time, like this powerful image of, that's tender.
That's it, isn't it?
Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Showing that empathy as well.
And such, you know, like solidarity. So yeah, I wanted to show that in this book, how these boys who've all got issues in different ways, you know, Mark's dealing with his mum's new boyfriend taking over their relationship in their home. Sammy's dealing with his dad being, you know, working all the time. Ali's dad's back on the scene. Adam's going to be sent back to Syria. A lot going on. And it's about how they are there for each other. And yeah, it's about community as well. So there's sport in this one. And I wanted to sort of show how sport and football can bring you together, even if you don't like it. I just wanted to show how like you can use things to connect community for the bigger thing and for the better good, you know.
And I think you're right in terms of sharing that sense of community, because I'm all about community as well in terms of my charitable and voluntary work that I do. And I think it's important for children to have that sense of community. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do we create that sense of belonging? And I think when you said about bringing in about the character, refugee character, that is important, that children have that understanding of other children who may be refugees, etc., that level of displacement. And kindly, all the authors have donated books, and the books have been split into 4 different charities, and one of the charities is Fences and Frontiers, and they support asylum seekers and refugees. So I know that they will that's not a word, isn't it? I know.
It's a good word.
It's a good word. We might have to use that in a book.
I mean, if Roald Dahl can, why can't we?
Yes, superly. There we go. I'll have to trademark that. That's the Oxford word of the year. Superly. Let's just use that. I was going to say to cut that out. I think we might use that. So superly, I know that they would really and truly appreciate this book and the work that they do. And the reason why I chose them as a charity, because I met them at an authors event that I was doing at the Discovery Story book venue in Stratford. Yeah, so the Fences and Frontiers community came along to an authors event that I was hosting, and I was just curious to know about their community and their charity. So I emailed the CEO, and when I thought, okay, I was doing this podcast, and wouldn't it be nice from the publishers to donate to books to charities where a lot of children may not get access to books. And I always believe that reading is for every single child, irrespective of geography, irrespective of their status. It's super important. They've had the first cohort of books, and it was they said they really appreciated it.
Well, thank you for doing that, and thank you for including us and allowing us to be part of that. So thank you.
No, I just think it's important.
But yeah, in Kicked Out, so one of the storylines, so the characters are from my original novel, my first novel, Boy Everywhere, and Sammy is a refugee from Syria. But in this one, we explore Adam's story, and he's come here as an unaccompanied minor, which is basically a refugee child who's come without any parents or guardians. So his life looks very, very different to Sammy's. Like, you see the struggle of Sammy's journey in Boy Everywhere, and you feel for that, but he has his parents, and his experience is very different to Adam's. Whereas Adam here, while these boys are playing in the pool, having the best time, he's working in the garden because he's not allowed to go to school. He's not allowed to work until he gets his refugee status. And because he's been like on his own, homeless for a long time till he got here. He doesn't look 16. He looks a lot older. Now, this happens all of the time where boys come here and they're told you're an adult. And obviously along the way, they lose their papers, they lose their passports. So they have no proof to say, I am a child. And, you know, basically at the beginning of this book, Adam gets a letter from the Home Office to say, you know, you're basically going to be sent back because you're an adult. And they think he's 25. And his hands are weathered. He's lived, you know, he hasn't got creams and he can't look after himself. So, yeah, basically it's about that sort of injustice of how children feel, you know, being stigmatized like that. But also when I worked with a charity to research. They're called BACA, and they look after young unaccompanied refugees. And the psychologist there said to me that the children are not traumatized by the journey that they take, you know, under lorries, on boats that almost capsize and drown. They're traumatized. The thing that affects them the most is not being believed that they are children. Because can you imagine, like, how can you say to someone, I am a child, like, don't treat me like this? And then they're put in hotels with men, adults, and they have to fend for themselves. So yeah, they act older because they've had to live an older life. So yeah, part of this book is about raising money to keep him here. And it sort of shows how he has to work while the kids are playing. And they're all friends. And how he's still a kid.
And it's that thing, isn't it? The rights of the child and the voice of the child. And it's important because a lot of children, teenagers, are not going to, may not know what happens to other children within their community, within their class. They may not know what goes on for other children. So that's why I think, again, why fiction books are super important in terms of informing children about how other children live and their home life and their background.
Yeah. And what I love is when I meet young people in schools and they really believe these characters are real. I love that. And they're like, what happened then? And what's, you know, and I'm like, oh God, I didn't think about that because they're not real. But yeah, they truly believe it because the story makes them sort of immerses them into this story.
Is there any talk of televising or film or anything?
So I have a film agent, so fingers crossed. But no, not at the moment. So it's out there.
Yeah. Yes. So we hope. So look out, because it takes about 2 years. So 2027, 28. Yes. Yeah. Because I can actually see it being a series or a film.
I would love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Like a 4-parter or something like that. Yes. Fantastic. So what is your favourite page of this book and why?
So this was hard to choose, but I went for page 218, which is right at the end of the book. Bit of a spoiler, everything's okay. But basically, the boys are diving. So you've got Mark doing a pencil dive, you've got Ali does a star jump dive, Adam does a belly flop, and Sammy does a backward dive and swims beautifully. And they're basically like competing and choosing who did the best. And Mum walks in with pizza, and it's sort of parallel to the opening scene where the boys are, everything's good and they're having fun in the pool. But this time Adam's also the refugee, the unaccompanied refugees, also with them having fun. So all 4 of them together. And I thought it was just a really nice representation of how they go through a lot in this book and how they all came together and they're having fun again. So yeah, I chose it for that reason.
It's just about them being children, really.
Yeah, being children.
They're just being children.
And I remember this with my cousins. I used to go swimming every Sunday and we would do this. And I didn't even have to swim at one point, but I used to just belly flop into the pool. Quickly grab, go to the side. But yeah, it's a happy scene.
Is that, and I think when you're swimming, is that you're free, so it's could be quite symbolic as well for Adam, isn't it? And that joyfulness is that we all had of swimming, and swimming is a very important skill. Absolutely. So, what question, if you was interviewing yourself, would you ask yourself about this book?
This was a really hard question Laura. But
That's my job.
you're good. So I'm thinking, I would ask myself, why kicked out? Why is it called kicked out? And the answer is that there are so many levels of kicked out in this. So first is that Mark feels kicked out of his mum and boyfriend's relationship and out of his own home because of how like he's taking over. Mark's mum's boyfriend is. And then the boys obviously physically get kicked out of the house. And then Ali feels kicked out by his father because his dad hasn't been in his life for 8 years and he's chosen a new family, his new family that he lives with, who, he picks up that son from school. So he feels kicked out of that relationship. Adam and Sammy have been kicked out of Syria and, so yeah, 4 levels of kicked out.
So it's
And
quite
then, of course,
symbolic.
yeah. And then you've got the football element where they're actually kicking balls to raise money. Yeah.
So there's so many themes to the title. It's amazing. It's very clever, actually. That's why you're a writer.
Yeah.
But what do you want children reading this book to reflect on and take away?
I think the first thing is that there will be times when everyone feels rejected. So whether that's because of a piece of work you did or a competition you entered, or maybe that's because of the way that somebody made you feel, like a friend or a loved one or a parent or a teacher even, where they say something to you and you feel hurt inside and it makes you question yourself and your self-worth and how you see yourself. And that's what happens to Ali. And I wanted them to feel empowered after reading this book and feel like, yes, terrible things can happen and people can make you feel very small, but you will get through it and find your place and you'll be fine. Ultimately, it takes time. So yeah, that's the one message, but also the message of friendship and community, how that can see you through and you've got to find your people. And how also these boys are there for each other. It's not like they're in each other's faces or huggy, touchy-feely, but they do it in a way that is so laid back and chilled out, natural and real. And there are so many ways to be friends. And sometimes we can think, oh, you have to be messing each other all the time, or you have to be meeting up all the time, and that's friendship. But there are many ways to show up. And I guess it's about showing up. That's friendship. So yeah, those are the key things in this book.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I love it. I just love it. I just think it's great. And I think that's just excellent to finish up on in terms of empowerment and friendship I'm hearing there. So please read this wonderful, inspiring and emotive book, Kicked Out. You can get it in your library if you can visit your library. And I always say, keep on reading and reading and reading and reading. And thank you, AM. Thank you for this interview.
Thanks for having me. It's really
You're
good to chat to you.
welcome. You're welcome. This podcast was woven in partnership with our friends at Tapestry, the childhood education platform. They have kindly devised the educational resources for each podcast interview. Tapestry helps you celebrate children's learning, improve communication with families, and streamline your admin with powerful booking, invoicing, and management tools, giving you more time for what matters, the children and you. Visit tapestry.info to find out more. This podcast series was recorded at the Quick Brown Fox Video Production Studios in Wandsworth Town, London, with top-notch equipment and a knowledgeable team who are always happy to help. Recording our podcast has been a breeze.